Paul McCartney, number 20 Forthland Road. And Paul moved into this house in the April of 1956, and it was his 7th house, believe it or not. He was 13 when he moved in.
Wow.
And the reason it was his 7th house is because of his mum. She was a district nurse, midwife and health visitor. She was moved around a lot, so when they moved into this house, she was sick of moving. She said to her husband, Jim, I'm not moving again. You have to get someone else for the job. But little did she know how true that was going to be. She was taken in for a breast cancer operation on the 31st of October, same year. Paul was 14 when his mum died, but it wasn't the cancer that killed her, it was an embolism. They came back to haunt him on the 17th of April 1998 when Linda died of breast cancer. So he set up the Linda McCartney Breast Cancer Charity run from Liverpool. So now that just left his father in charge. Now, this is a good quiz question. If you're writing a quiz or you're hearing a quiz, you know the answer. What's Paul's middle name?
Paul.
Yes. His name is Paul. James Paul. This is his birth certificate. James Paul McCartney. His father's James, his son is James. It's a family traditional name that's actually passed down the generations.
Mary, okay. Occupation, lathe turner. Okay.
During the war years, he used to be a lathe turner, making parts for aeroplanes.
Sure.
So this is the family on holiday in Wales. There's little chubby Paul there. Now, after Mary had died, his father was left in charge.
Right.
And this is a picture of the 3 boys in the back garden of this house. Now, for daytime, his father was normally in the cotton industry. But for a weekend, he was in a little band called the Jim Mac Jazz Band. And when Paul was 14, he bought him a trumpet. Now, Paul liked playing the trumpet, but he'd been in the theatre to see Lonnie Donegan. He'd also been learning to play his friend's guitar in school. And then Elvis Presley appeared on the radio with Heartbreak Hotel. He said, Dad, I can't sing when I blow a trumpet. So he swapped it for his Zenith guitar. That's 15-year-old Paul in the back garden of that house there. He also learned to play his father's piano. Father said, learn to play the piano, son. Everyone invites you to the party. But he also played something else. He learned to play the drums. That's him coming out this house here.
Right.
Now, see them bricks? Now look at the bricks.
Yes.
Chipped away by the fans. I've stopped 2 people from doing that over the years.
That's 20, right?
Over
Okay.
20, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when they were making the White Album, Yoko Ono came in the recording studio. Big argument erupted. And Ringo couldn't stand it anymore and he went on strike. So Paul had to play drums on 2 tracks. Back in the USSR and Dear Prudence, that's Paul on the drums. Now, not long after that, John was interviewed and asked the question, is Ringo Starr the best drummer in the world? He said he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
I've heard that.
Get in there, John.
That's a good one.
Now, his father had to wake them up for school, but then he'd go to work. Like every teenager, he went back to sleep for 5 minutes. 20 minutes later, he'd realise he was late for school. He'd run around the house to get ready, then he'd run to the top of the street to catch the bus to school. He remembers that in a song, A Day in the Life. Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. Had a cup, coat and hat, made the bus in seconds flat. Sometimes he'd ring George Harrison. George hated school anyway, and he would practice in there with Paul. But when he met John Lennon, he came here more than most. And in that room downstairs at the back of the house, they started the Lennon and McCartney songwriting partnership. Dozens and dozens of Beatles songs written here. Paul thinks it's possibly up to 70, but no one can put a figure on it. Thinking of Lincoln, 1 after 909, Love Me Do, From Me to You, When I'm 64, Winston's War, Cat's War, I Saw the Stand on It, I'll Follow the Sun. That's just a few of them. And here they are writing songs together. On the floor are the words to I Saw Her Standing There. Now all that writing and all that singing, they now need a cup of tea. And John Lennon is on tea duty in the kitchen. Now the,
modest kitchen, eh?
now the National Trust bought this house and borrowed Michael McCartney's photographs, like that one, and they reconstructed it to look like this. They invited Michael back and asked him what he thought. He said it's brilliant, exactly as I remember it. Only one problem, he said. There was 3 boys living in the house. It's too clean. Got cleaned once a week by Auntie Gin on a Sunday. She made Sunday lunch and then cleaned the house. Paul would come home. Where's my song lyrics gone? Used to leave bits of paper around the house with lyrics on. She put them all in the bin. Now he remembers Auntie Jim when he's with Wings. Brother Michael, Auntie Jim, open the door, let them in. Makes sense now, doesn't it?
Right. Sure does.
Now by 1964, he's quite rich. He decides to be the first member of the family in this house to buy himself a car. Not just any old car. He bought himself an Austin Princess Van der Plas limousine. And when you come home, where'd you park it? You park it right outside the door. His brother Mike was in the bedroom one day and took this picture outside the window. In 1999, Paul knocks on the door. Unfortunately, there was nobody in. But the neighbours in the street seen him and they had their picture taken with him.
Nice. That's great.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but people from Liverpool are known as Scousers.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, it's a Viking term. It's basically a stew. Paul is very proud to be a Scouser. He said so himself.
Yeah.
Now, back to carpool karaoke. I was at Strawberry Fields and someone said to me, Paul's at Penny Lane. I went, oh, I've done Penny Lane, I've only got Paul's to do now. I came here, there was 5 people there, and he said to me, Paul's in the house. So I've done my story, and then my tour disappeared into the throng of 150 people who suddenly appeared. And they were all standing over there. I knew Paul had to go that way because his car was parked up there.
Sure.
So I stood by this little wall behind me. And I had a great unobstructed view when he came out the house. The security guard came in front of him, gets to me, he says, come on, move on. I said, you move on, I'm not moving anywhere. Paul was catching up, he had to go round me. And I stepped in next to James Corden. How close can he get to Paul McCartney?
Pretty darn close.
I'm in shock, by the way.
Oh, poor Paul, he looks his age.
Now, Paul himself shared the second biggest bedroom at the back of the house with his brother Mike. Mike got a lot of photography equipment, so he was getting a bit packed. So Paul volunteered to move to the little box room above the front door there. But there was another motive for him doing that, because he seen the ledge above the front door. He used to climb out the window, onto the ledge, jump down, go and see his girlfriend. His father found out what he was doing, and he thought, I'll show him, and he put the snip on at the back, so he couldn't get his key in, and it wouldn't open. So he had to go round the back of the house, start throwing little stones at his brother's Mike's bedroom and wake him up. And then he used to climb up the back.
Great.
Now his mother was called Mary, and she was the inspiration for Let It Be. Yeah.
Sure.
Eddie, Strawberry Fields is closed.
Oh, I'm sorry, Strawberry Fields.
Let's go. It's John Winston. Oh no. And this is Mum and Dad, Julia and Freddie. Now they were approximately 14 and 16 when they met. Sitting in Sefton Park with her friend by the lake. Freddie walks past with a bowler hat on. She said, your hat looks stupid. He skimmed the hat across the lake. Lost a perfectly good hat that day, but he won her heart. But her father didn't really like Freddie, lazy, no good for nothing youth, and constantly honoured her to get rid of this guy. A few years down the line, she threw a piece of paper across the table at him. Can't say nothing now, we're married. She got married on the 3rd of December 1938. And she's pregnant with John, and then Freddie decides to join the merchant navy, and he went away to sea a lot. And when he came home, he was only home for 2 days. Now this wasn't a life for her. She tried to get him to leave the merchant navy and get a job on land in the docks, but he said no, I'm married to the sea. So that wasn't going to happen. She decided her marriage to Freddie was now over. So she met another guy called Taffy Williams. Well, Taffy loved her, wanted to marry her, but he had 2 conditions. One condition was to make sure divorced by Freddie, and 2, get rid of John.
Get rid of John.
Get rid of John. Now Freddie wouldn't divorce her, and he never ever did, and she wouldn't get rid of John at this point. So they split up because of it. Then she found out she's pregnant, and Mimi, her older sister, who lived in this house here, when she noticed, and she asked her, who's the father? Freddie's not here. So she wouldn't tell her. So she told their father, and the 2 of them berated her until they found out who the father was. She said it was Taffy Williams and he raped me. They dragged her over to Chester where he was stationed and confronted Taffy, where she admitted she had lied. She wasn't raped at all. And to be honest, he didn't know nothing about the baby, and it wasn't even his. She'd been having an affair with her best friend's husband. His name was Per Pedersen. Salvation Army officer from Norway, and he was the father. Now, under pressure from the family, the baby was adopted by Per Pedersen, and her name was changed to Ingrid Pedersen. Now, Ingrid was born on the 19th of June 1945. As you can see, no father's name, just Julia Lennon. So her name was changed from Victoria Elizabeth to Ingrid Pedersen. Now, the chances are John didn't know anything about her. There's two stories here. There's one rumour saying that he sent an investigator over to Norway to find her. And the other thing is, if he did suspect, who's the first person he would have asked? The one he was closest to in the family, his sister Julia. Julia didn't know nothing till 1998. Now, she appeared in the papers after her adopted mother died, because Per Pedersen's wife Margaret couldn't have children, so this was an ideal situation for her. She found her adoption papers at a young age, but didn't want to upset her adoptive mum. Said nothing until 1998 when she died, and she appeared in the papers. I'm John Lennon's sister, and this is what she looked like. She was growing up, and there she was with Yoko. And another one again at the Strawberry Fields Memorial Park. This is the imagined part of it.
With Yoko and John.
Yeah, Sean. Yeah. Now, the next man in John's mum's life was a guy called Bobby Dykins, and there he is. Now, they went on to have two daughters, Julia and Jackie. And John did know about them, and he had a good relationship with them. But at the time, John's mum was sleeping with Bobby in a one-bedroom flat with one bed. John was sleeping in the same bed as his mum and her boyfriend. Mimi, John's mum's older sister, living in this house here, she didn't like that and went round and told them so. But nothing happened. So she told the social services. The social services went round and agreed with her that John was best taken off and living here with Auntie Mimi and Uncle George. So that's how he ended up living with his auntie. Now, Freddie comes home from sea and knocks on the door. I want to take John out for the day. If you're not taking him anywhere, you can come in and see him. He stays for the day, but he begs Mimi, can I stay the night? I've nowhere to sleep and I'll go back to sea in the morning. So for John's sake, she let him stay the night. When she got up the next morning, the two of them had gone. He was now taking John to live with him and live in New Zealand, where he was emigrating to. His mum went searching, and it took 2 months to find them, 50 miles away in Blackpool in his friend Billy Hall's house. So let's say they had a bit of a discussion. She pointed out to Freddie, you're going to sea on the ship, you can't take John on the ship. So John was given back to his mum, and then came back to Liverpool, given back to his auntie. Just before that, John's mum had a miscarriage. John was sent to live with his uncle Sidney in Maghull in Liverpool for a few months. So at 5 years of age, John was being passed around quite a lot. Now, after that event in Blackpool, John didn't see his father for 19 years. He was making a film A Hard Day's Night, and his father appeared in the papers. My son's a millionaire. I'm a penniless pot washer. John was furious, but he agreed to meet him. I'm rich and famous, am I? You want me money? You never sent me any money or cards at Christmas and birthdays. I did, John, every year. Ask Mimi what she done with them. Now, she said he never, he said he did. Both of them were liars. Which one do you believe? So now he has an up and down relationship with his father for the next 6 years. He actually moved him in at one point to live with him and his wife Cynthia. Moves him out again when his father made advances towards his wife. He sets him up in his own flat, and one day Freddie, now in his mid-50s, turns up with the barmaid from the pub he's working in. 19-year-old Pauline Jones. They got married and had 2 children. So he'll be keeping up with all these siblings. John has 3 half-sisters, 2 half-brothers, Robin and David. John knew about Robin and David, but he didn't have a relationship with them because in 1970, John had problems in his head. And he went to see a psychiatrist called Dr. Arthur Yanoff for primal screen therapy, which took him back to all the problems in his life. He gets that problem in Blackpool when he's only 5, and he thinks that's when it starts. He goes to see his father, you stay away from me, every problem I seem to have stems from you. I don't want to see it again. And he didn't see him again. But in 1975, for the first time for a long time in John's life, he had some peace in his life. Credit where it's due, Yoko gets some credit for that because he was always looking for that mother figure. His nickname for her was Mother. She was always shouting at him, telling him off. She was 7 years older than him as well. So credit where it's due. Yoko gets that credit. He'd been back in the recording studio in Bermuda, seen a flower grown called the Double Fantasy Flower. He named his album after it. He decided to give Freddie another chance as well. But he was a stay-at-home father with Sean. He didn't want to make the same mistake he'd done with Julian. And his friends were telling him, get back to work, don't be lazy, you're a waste of talent. So he wrote a song called Watching the Wheels, one of my favourite John Lennon songs. So he decides to give Freddie another chance. He makes a transatlantic phone call. Can't get back to Britain just yet. I'm trying to get him a green card. As soon as I've got it, I'll come and see you. We'll wipe the slate clean, we'll start again. Well, Freddie never told John in that conversation he had stomach cancer and was dying. And on the 1st of April 1976 in Brighton, Freddie died. John couldn't go to the funeral, didn't have his green card. He said, I wouldn't have gone anyway, I didn't even know the man. But he did send some flowers. So that's his father. Now, he moved in here to live with these two, Auntie Mimi and Uncle George. You don't hear much of George, you should hear more. He taught him to paint, poetry, crossword puzzles, things that John was good at. He's the man who gave him his first harmonica. He's the man who gave him his love, his hugs and kisses. Mimi didn't do that, very Victorian. And she'd say, oh, don't be doing the soppy stuff, John. As you can see with the photograph, he's closer to George than he is to Mimi. So when we moved in, Mimi had told John, sorry John, your mum's moved, we can't go and see her, she lives too far away now. She told John's mum, don't come here all the time. It takes me 2 hours to calm him down when you leave. So his mum was only allowed to come every 2 or 3 weeks. And if she came unannounced, Mimi would chase her. Go away, Julia. I haven't got time to calm him down today. I've got things to do. She'd go home crying. So John had to start growing up. He'd go to school. He'd hang around in the street behind this one, where his friends were living. And in the house behind him lived Ivan Vaughan. You remember that name? It's coming back in the story. He also heard a brass band playing in that direction one day. What's that noise, Mimi? It's a Salvation Army brass band at Strawberry Fields, John. So John went to Strawberry Fields that day to watch the brass band. Every time they had a garden fete, John was there with his auntie. In the end, they were helping out, selling lemonade from a little table. So from an early age, John was doing charity work for orphans. And he'd wait by the gate over there, the one that's now getting repaired. And when his mum got off at the bus stop here, he'd run down the street and he'd jump all over his mum. So this is a picture of John standing by the gate. Then
Gate?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that's getting repaired at the moment. So that's him by the gate. And when he's about 9 years of age, his cousin, Stanley Parks, this guy here, came down on holiday from Scotland. He felt sorry for John. Do you want to go and see your mum, John? Anyway, she lives. John was all excited. What bus do we get? What train? John, we don't have to. She lives over there. He'd been lied to. Behind them bungalows over there is a golf course, the white bungalows. On the far side of the golf course is the housing estate his mum was living in. John was always on the golf course collecting lost golf balls, selling them back to the golfers. And if he couldn't find them, he'd wait on the greens and steal them and run away. A few clipped ears for that. He was 5 minutes from his mum's house and didn't even know. So he knocks on his mum's door and he got all upset when she answered. But she said to him, John, now you know where to live. Come and see me whenever you want to. But don't tell Mimi, she will stop you from coming again. John comes back to the house. Mimi, you lied. My mum lives over there. He's 9. I'm bringing you up, not your mother. Do not go to her house without my permission. But he carried on going to see his mum. We took her in the cinema to see Elvis Presley. She taught him to play the banjo. So John asked Mimi to buy him a guitar. No, John, your education's more important. Every day he asked her, got the same reply. One day she said to him, John, stop asking me that stupid question. A guitar's all right for fun, but you'll never make any money from it. How wrong was she? In 1965, he had to move his auntie from this house because the fans, they drove her out. So, where do you want to live, Mimi? No idea. Where have you been on holiday, you like? Well, I like Bournemouth. So he buys her a house in Sandbanks. So there's Mimi and John, his half-sister Jackie and Jackie's friend over there. John liked coming here, there's a view out to see, he got a bit of peace. But on one occasion he left. 10 minutes later, Mimi gets a phone call from John. Go in the garden, look behind the bush, I've left you a little present. She found a jewellery box full of jewellery with an engraved plaque on the top. Guitar's all right for fun, but you'll never make any money from it. Mimi Smith. Now, Yoko Ono bought this house.
Huh.
And she gave it to the National Trust. She said, I'm buying it for every Beatle fan in the world so they get a chance to see how John lived. I don't want people buying it and putting extensions on and changing the windows and things, so good on her for doing that. That's it in the porch with Olivia, George's second wife.
Right.
In 1956, if you walk down this street, you'd see John in that porch playing his guitar. 1957, Paul McCartney was in there with him. He liked it in there, the acoustics were good, the glass, the tiles. Now, unfortunately, Uncle George came stumbling down the stairs one day and he had a handkerchief held to his mouth covered in blood. He died the following day, the 5th of June 1955. He was 52 years of age and I was the only father figure John really had in his life. But on the 15th of July 1958, John's mum came here. It's about 8 o'clock. John stayed till about 9. He said, Mum, I'm going out with my friends and I'll see you back at your house later on. So he left. Now, she wanted to get the bus at 10 o'clock at that bus stop over across the other side of the road, back to Penny Lane, then she'd get a bus in the other direction. She didn't walk across the Gulf Coast. So she was standing by the gate about 9:15, saying goodbye to Mimi, when Nigel Wally, John's friend, came walking down the street. Nigel, you're just in time. You can walk me to the bus stop. He walked down to the junction of Vale Road just there, and Nigel turns right to go home. Julia crosses onto the other side of the road, and as she crossed onto the other carriageway, bang, 40 mile an hour she was hit, landing on her head. By the time he got onto the hospital, she was gone. By the time John got to the hospital, no one could calm him down. In an interview years later, he said, it's not fair, I lost my mum twice in my life. Once when I was only 5, taking off her. Once when I was 17, just getting to know her and get a good relationship. I didn't speak to Nigel for a while. He didn't want to know how his mum died. And Nigel was happy with that. He felt guilty. I should have walked to the bus stop. John Lennon was a rebel. I think he's a rebel with a cause. I forgive John everything he'd done in his life. Nice house, not the greatest childhood. Atherton behind his back and call him names. He never wears a Mac in the pouring rain. Very strange. Again, like what he sees. Half a mile down the road on the way to Paul's was a fire station, and Paul would drive past the fire station every single day going to school on the bus. And he'd see the fireman washing his fire engine, keeping his fire engine clean. It's a clean machine. And in his pockets is a portrait of the Queen. That's his money. The Queen's face on. Now, if you were standing on top of that church tower over there, St Barnabas's Church, where Paul was a chorister, and this is a picture of what that shelter would have looked like. So this is the picture. There was toilets either end and a shelter in the middle.
Shelter in the middle of the roundabout.
Behind the shelter in the middle of the roundabout, a pretty nurse is selling poppies from a tray. She feels that she's in a play. She is anyway. Now that was probably the influence of John Lennon, because the pretty nurse selling poppies from a tray used to go to school with a friend of John's. Her name was Beth Davidson. And there she is. This is her friend Margaret Jones. They had a friend called Annette, and they loved acting, as you can see. Annette's father built them a little stage in his garden, and they used to act in front of their friends. But they weren't stupid. They charged them money for watching them. When she grew up, she married John's best friend in the Quarrymen, Pete Shot, and he remained his friend his entire life. Set him up in a business in Hayling Island with a post office and supermarket. And eventually, Pete started a restaurant chain in Britain called Fatty Arbuckles. And there he is. That's with young Julian.
Yeah.
And there is the pretty nurse that was selling poppies from a tray, Beth Davidson. And that's with Cynthia and Patty, John's and George's first wife.
Patty, yeah.
Now the final line in the song is the one that is still confusing people all around the world still today. I had someone last week who actually knew what the line was because he'd read it in a book. It's now appearing in books nowadays. And that line is, a four of fish and finger pies and blue suburban skies. The blue suburban skies is the obvious one. A four of fish is a fish for 4p in the fish and chip shop. You've got a four of fish and a 2 of chips. A finger pie is something totally different. There's a local Liverpool saying, and Paul put it in the song, to give the boys in Liverpool a laugh and a joke. And he got away with that. It should have been banned. It's a bit of schoolboy smut, and I'm leaving it there. So, you got the barber shop, the bank, the pretty nurse selling poppies from the tray, fireman keeping his fire engine clean, four of fish and finger pies and blue suburban skies. And it's all in his ears and his eyes.
Lovely.
Easy.
Fantastic, Phil. You're great. A raconteur.
It starts with the original barbershop, and I have a picture of the original barbershop, which is this here. Paul McCartney. And everyone was doing that, what I've just done,
Right.
stroking it.
Mm-hmm.
It was fading away, as you can see.
Right.
So one of our tour guides called Claire wrote to Liverpool City Council and asked them to do something about it. Well, within days, we got this put on,
Right.
which is now saving it from being removed.
Sure.
But when Paul actually signed the street sign, he said, no one will actually believe that that's my autograph. So I have the proof. And there we are.
Nice.
So there it is. Paul McCartney.
Put your finger down there again, please.
Paul McCartney.
Sweet.
Now all the lines in the song of Penny Lane are at the top of the street. So as we drive up Penny Lane, I'm going to tell you why Paul wrote the song. I'll show you all the places in the song, the barbershop, the bank, the shelter in the middle of the roundabout. So show you all them. And then I'll go over every single line in the song, explain them to you, and then I'll play it.
Lovely.
And you'll listen to it totally different.
I'm in. I'm all in. What's your name again?
Phil?
Phil. You're great, Phil.
Okay.
Alrighty.